and California. Joining us this evening is Matthew Klein. He is with the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. He analyzes House races as well as the gubernatorial. And Sabrina Siddiqui is with the National Political Reporter with the Wall Street Journal. And we thank you both for being here with us tonight. We are just about, 4 minutes away here from Virginia polls closing. Matthew Klein, do you think we get a call right away?
Oh, right away? I don't know. That's a good question. It will probably come fairly quickly. Based on everything we've seen so far, if this is really going to be the decisive night for Abigail Spanberger that a lot of the polls have indicated that it might be, then yeah, we'll probably get a call fairly soon. It'll take a little while longer to call the Attorney General's race. Obviously, that has a history of voting very competitively. The Attorney General contests often take a little bit longer in Virginia, and I think because of the circumstances of the current contest between Jay Jones and Jason Miyares as the incumbent Republican, it's probably going to be, a fairly long night before we have an answer on that one.
One of our first callers came from Arlington, Virginia, suburbs here of Washington, D.C. Talk about Northern Virginia. How populated is this part of the state? And how quickly do they count votes there?
Yeah. Northern Virginia is the engine of Democratic strength in Virginia, and it's part of the reason that the state swung from being sort of a Republican stronghold back in the 80s and 90s, really one of the few southern states that was Republican, to now being one of the few southern states that votes Democratic. The growth of Northern Virginia, Arlington, but Fairfax County, Loudoun County in particular, Prince William, some of those counties where it's really expanded out, has just been a huge asset for Democrats. And it's also been particularly hard hit by the federal workforce layoffs that have happened and the government shutdown. And government shutdown doesn't just affect people who have been directly laid off by the federal government. Around here, it affects, the people who are contractors for the federal government or who work closely with federal employees, rely on federal employees, getting them, to and from for their businesses. Yeah, absolutely. Northern Virginia is an extremely crucial part of this equation. Some parts of it count faster than others, so we'll keep an eye on, which parts do and don't. But I think, we'll get a pretty good sense of it pretty early on.
When you look at the state, where are there Republican strongholds versus the Democratic strongholds that you just talked about?
Yeah, Republicans have much stronger bases of support out in rural Virginia. Particularly out in Western Virginia, more Appalachian. It's more mountainous, culturally more conservative out there. Republicans also do fairly well in some of the suburbs of Richmond, the exurbs of Richmond. They've really lost a lot of ground here in Northern Virginia, so they used to have a decent base of support in Fairfax County. And in recent years, that's kind of gone away, and they've become a much more rural-centric party. There is some Republican strength still in the Virginia Beach area. That continues to be represented by a Republican in Congress. But by and large, Republicans have seen while they may have seen their geographical footprint expand a little bit, they've taken over some more of the rural area. Their actual share of the vote has diminished in recent cycles, and it seems like tonight's going to be another example of that.
So when you look at the votes coming in right away when polls close at 7, as we see the percentage start to trickle in, what will it look like? Could it look lopsided at first?
Yeah, certainly. And I think it's important not to make too many predictions based on anything that we're seeing really very quickly. We'll want to wait until we have some counties that have fully reported, which may take a little while, before we can start actually comparing them to where things were last cycle in 2024, 2021, 2020.
Abigail Spanberger, if she wins tonight, Sabrina, what does that mean for the Democratic Party? She's a national security candidate, a moderate Democrat. What does the party do with that? Is that a winning formula for them?
I think the party believes that it is, because I think they're looking at all of this depending on where that candidate is elected, right? So Abigail Spanberger is a very different type of candidate than Zohran Mamdani. And it's very likely that both of them will win their races tonight. And in some ways, it's the best of both worlds for Democrats as they are trying to reassemble this coalition that they lost in the last election cycle, where they were really struggling between appealing to centrists, in a race ultimately eventually between Vice President Harris and President Trump, at the same time as trying not to contend with the fact that they had turned off a lot of the progressive liberal-leaning base. I think Democrats are pretty enthusiastic about her candidacy. Also, she will make history. Either way, history will be made. Virginia will be electing also its first female governor,
That's
which
right.
is also worth marking, even though they didn't talk about it a lot on the campaign trail. But coming back to just the themes that we've seen, I think, if this election if tonight is ultimately about cost of living, the economy, inflation, then I think Abigail Spanberger is going to have a really good night. Again, the margin is what Democrats are looking for. They really want it to be a very decisive victory, because the more decisive, then the more confident that they'll feel about rebuilding the party's image, rather than simply a protest vote against President Trump.
All right, the polls closed 90 seconds ago in Virginia. We are just a minute and change after 7 p.m. Eastern time here on the East Coast. And we are watching the candidates in the Virginia gubernatorial race. We've got cameras at the headquarters tonight. On your left is the headquarters for Abigail Spanberger. She's in Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the state. And the lieutenant governor, the Republican candidate, Winsome Earle-Sears, she is in Leesburg, Virginia. When the candidates come out to speak, we will bring you live coverage of their remarks. That's all part of C-SPAN's Election Night 2025 coverage.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.